Om Akhandamandalakaram Vyaptam Yen Characharam Tatpadam Darshidam Yen Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanam Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yen Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwarat Gurur Sakshat Parabrahm Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Today it's an introductory session, so we need to look at the Upanishad as a whole. More than 2000 years ago, since the time of maybe creation, the truths which are called the Shruti, which are in the Vedas, have been there. Not as if they weren't there. The great Rishi was also considered an emanation of Narayana, Vedavyasa, compiled them. He only compiled them. It's not that they did not exist. Some people think Vedavyasa wrote. No. ऐसा कुछ नहीं. He compiled the Shruti into, split it into different sections and made it readable for people. In fact, the word Vyasa in Sanskrit simply means a compiler. If you add the word Veda, Vyasa, compiler of the Vedas. So please note that the Vedas originally are Shruti. Now when you say Shruti, you cannot read Shruti. You know what, if people who are in music, dance, they know what is Shruti. You cannot read Shruti. You cannot see Shruti. That which is heard through your Shrotra, through the ear, or through the inner ear, need not be external ear. Even deaf people who are externally deaf can hear the Shruti. So what it means is that which is heard, not that which is written. All this is written later, much later. So Veda Vyasa compiled the Shruti into 4 sections, starting with Rig, Yajur, Sama, Atharvana. 4 Vedas. Now, so Veda basically means, even though it was compiled later, that which is heard in a higher state of consciousness from the universal being, from the supreme reality. Now, these Vedas, which are considered to be Shruti, have, Vyasa was mainly responsible for that, 4 sections. One is, of course, the Samhita. The Samhita portions are those hymns which are sung. The whole of the Veda Samhita portion is there. The Gayatri mantra, the great mantra, which is the most important mantra in the Rig Veda, is Samhita, from the Samhita portion. After the Samhita portion, you have the Brahmanas. Now, the Brahmanas are the ceremonial parts of the Vedas. Vedas, still Vedas. So, what I'm trying to say, when you say Vedas, it includes all this, not just the Samhita. The Brahmanas are the ceremonials and so on performed with keeping the Shruti in view, Samhita in view, to have a personal link between you, the human being, me, a human being, and that which is beyond. So in that Brahmanas is also included all the study about the Tantras and, not as it is today, but these sections on lighting the fire, what it relates to the human being, what it means, and so on and so forth. So these are the Brahmanas, the ceremonies that were performed. In the olden days, there were no priests. Everybody did their own havans in their homes. Everybody had their own fire. People used to perform, the head of the household used to perform, and the yajnas were performed. The one who presided over the yajna was the yajamana. So this is the ceremonial portion. In fact, I would also say that in it you can also include the knowledge of the tantras, because the tantras speak of the Sri Yantra and the relationship between the human and so on. Now, for ceremonial worship, the Agni was very important, the fire. You have to note that in ancient times, even today, the fire is a very important part of life. In fact, human beings began to get more civilized when they started using fire to cook food. Otherwise, raw food, many people were eliminated because you don't know whether what is in it. When you cook, then it becomes eatable. Fire was also used as a symbol of wisdom, because why I'm saying this is in most of the Samhit, the Brahmana portions, fire plays a very important role. You offer fire into the fire, the oblations. Fire, therefore, represents in ancient times you couldn't find you light a fire using matchboxes. There were no matchboxes. There were no lighters. So how do you ignite? So in ancient times, the process of bringing out a fire was very elaborate, because you had to rub the arni, which is two dry pieces of wood rubbed together, and the fire came out. And then, therefore, the rishis said the fire was already existent in the wood, but it was not seen. It was manifested through friction. Just understand this. The Brahmanas are not so unimportant as people dismiss it as ceremonials. The ceremonials had a certain reason for existing. The ceremony of lighting a fire is a ceremony, but you see the implications of it, that you rub dry pieces of wood and the fire comes out. The fire was nowhere in sight until you rubbed it, then it came out. So there's the same way in the human mind, when certain sounds and certain actions and certain thoughts are rubbed together, the fire of the spirit is ignited. So the ceremonial Brahmana, the ceremonial presentation of the inner awakening of the spirit. You cannot just dismiss it like that. There are many important aspects to this. Only those who have renounced everything and become sannyasins are allowed to renounce the Brahmanas. That too, not all, some portions. The sannyasins of the orthodox sampradaya don't keep a fire, because they're not supposed to do anything with that. They don't have to cook, because you have to feed them. Right? From the Brahman, Samhita, then the Brahmanas. After the Brahmanas comes one portion which was generally studied in the Aranyakas, the forest. So they were called Aranyaka, actually. In the Aranya is a forest. Hardly difficult to find forest nowadays, but you may find a forest in Jim Corbett, maybe. But people go there to watch animals, not. So, in ancient times, all the institutions of knowledge were in forests. They were called forest academies. The rishis lived there. The students lived with them and learnt. So we have discussed roughly, not elaborate, from Samhita to Brahmana to Aranyaka. Now, Aranyaka is that part of the Vedas which were discussed in detail the inner aspects of what is the ceremony of the fire, what does it mean, what is Agni. When you say Agni, Supataya, what does it mean? And so on. From the portion called Aranyaka, there is a gradual movement towards still more depth, which is the Upanishad, where the great Mahavakyas which have been discussed in the Vedas, like Prajnanam Brahma, Ayam Atma Brahma, Tat Tvamasi, Aham Brahma, and others like Purusha Shukta, Sahasra Shirsha Purusha Sahasraksha Sahasrapad Sabhumim Vishvato Vritva Tyatishti Dashangulam. So this is from the Rig, also in the Shukla Yajurveda. So the inner meaning of these was analyzed and looked at in the Upanishad portion. So the Upanishads are still deeper aspects of the Aranyakas. In fact, some Upanishads are called also Aranyakas. So this is the Upanishad. So they usually come at the last part of the Vedic body of literature. But believe me, please don't forget that the Upanishads are also Vedas. They are only the end of the Vedas. They're not. Because generally people think Vedas means the Samhita portion only. Some think it's the Brahmanas. No. When you say Veda, it means Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka and Upanishad. These two are, the division is little loose between Aranyaka and Upanishad. But they are the same. Now the Upanishads go deep into the understanding of the Mahavakyas, into the understanding of the Shuktas, in the understanding of the Shruti which comes in the Samhita as well as in the Brahmana portions. They go deep into understanding that, and therefore they have to be studied in close quarters, which is why I climbed down from there and came here, between two people sitting facing each other. And believe me, in those days there were no microphones also. So people had to hear what was being said, and in the form of a samvad, a dialogue. But then look at the samvad called the Bhagavad Gita. Who is talking most of the time? It's a samvad. It is Srimad Bhagavad Gita Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade. But who is talking? Bhagavan is only talking. Arjuna in between butts in and says, okay, then Krishna usually, shut up. Now, he didn't say shut up, the same words, but he talks. So, this is the samvad between two people. So, the Upanishads are basically samvad. Maybe discussions between the Rishi and the. But remember, those disciples who went to the Rishi with the fire in hand, fuel in hand, were not like nowadays. So there was a chance to ask proper questions, and the question has to be proper before a proper answer can be given. And taking the fuel in hand also has another meaning. When you are going to understand the truth, when you are fully having all the fuel with you, all the fuel is over, I am old, now retirement. What is my retirement plan? To study Vedanta. You study Vedanta from Brahmacharya to Grahastha and then upwards. It's not a pastime for people who have retired, please. So therefore, people go with fuel in hand because they still have all the energy in them. Samit Pani, with all the fire in hand, with the fire. So therefore, this end portion of the Vedas, since the Upanishads occur at the end, they are called Vedanta. They are called Vedanta. There's another reason why they are called Vedanta. Because when the Upanishads are properly understood, when the teaching comes from a person who has understood and experienced it, you can't even say experienced it, you cannot experience it, understood and felt or realized it. When the Shruti is taught, and it is Shruti, and when the listener who is prepared already through so many preparations, ready, listens to it, one word, it goes in and it is done. Otherwise, you can hear it so many times. There is a difference between hearing and listening. There is a difference between seeing and observing. You can hear many things, they need not go in. So, when the Shruti is heard and if the listener is prepared, already it has done his work. So, when this happens, One has touched that which, when once known, nothing more remains to be known. Not that they know physics. You have touched something which, when once known, nothing remains. People have this wrong idea that if you have realized the self, then you know physics and geometry. It's not like that. It's a misunderstanding. You may not. Yeah, you can if you put your mind to it, but no. What it means is you have touched that, knowing which nothing more remains to be known and nothing more desires to be learned, because all your desires are fulfilled. How are the desires fulfilled? Because every one of us has desires. And the desire is for satisfaction, happiness, ananda. When you touch the essence which the Upanishad describes, you have touched the ultimate happiness from which you don't desire anything else. Therefore, it is the end of learning, because Veda also means learning. Not because you stop learning, but because there is nothing to learn for your satisfaction. Everything is done. You have I wouldn't say you have touched the Supreme, at least you have touched the feet of the Lord. Let's put it this way. Better to be humble in this matter. So, therefore, it's also called Vedanta. The end of the Vedas, which means it's also Vedanta because it comes at the end of the portions, Samhita and so on. Now, this particular section called Upanishad is the jewel of the entire teachings. So much so, that all the great acharyas, normally when we say commentaries, we only think of Shankara. Not true, really, because of course Shankara was a commentator par excellence, no question about that, right? But among the Upanishads, there are many Upanishads. There are major principal Upanishads, there are minor Upanishads, there are Yoga Upanishads. It is in the Kali Santara Upanishad that the mantra Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare occurs. Of course, from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time became Hare Krishna first, but it doesn't matter. So, there are many Upanishads. So, the most ancient Upanishads that we have, generally from the Yajurveda, Samaveda, and so on, are the 11 principal Upanishads. 11 principal Upanishads. Why are they called 11 principal Upanishads? Because they're among the oldest and they have been commented upon by all the important acharyas, not only Shankara. Shankara's commentary, of course, is there. Many people know. When you go to the West, see, the problem is in India nowadays people don't study any of these things because the gurus also offer shortcuts. You simply sit and turn your eyes up and you're gone. You're gone to moksha. You don't understand anything and move. So, you, in those days, but if you go to the West, for instance, I'm not praising the West. Once I was called, I went many years ago to Harvard. There I had to discuss with a group of professors who belong to the philosophy section. So the subject was Upanishad, Vedanta. So in between my pravachan, I mentioned Vedanta a couple of times. But if you mention Vedanta in India generally, now unfortunately, it was not so before, people usually think that Vedanta is Shankara. So after 3 times of repeating the word Vedanta, one of the professors put up his hand in front. I didn't realize that he was heading the Sanskrit department in Harvard. And he was an American. And he was also the head of the philosophy department. He put up his hand and he said, "Sir, when you say Vedanta, which Vedanta are you talking about? It is Shankara's Advaita Vedanta or Ramanujacharya's Vishishta Advaita or Madhva's Dvaita or Nimbarka, Vallabhacharya. Which one, which Vedanta are you talking about? Nobody has asked me this question in this country. So I had to explain to him. So the 11 Upanishads are called principal Upanishads because they have been translated and commented upon by all the major acharyas. All. And they are among the most ancient. Among which we have, I can't remember all, the Brihadaranyaka is one of the biggest Upanishads that's available to us, where you encounter this wonderful rishi called Yajnavalkya. There's also a chapter on him teaching Maitri, his wife. When Yajnavalkya decides to go into the forest, he has two wives, not to be emulated. He knew how to handle it, we don't. So, one of his wives, Maitri, said, I would also come with you to the forest. And so he explains to her why he's going and what it is all about. It's a beautiful chapter. But the Brihadaranyaka is so big and so calm, sometimes you can go in and not come out. Go in, you know those things you have where you get in and you find it difficult to get out. Maze. Then the Keno Upanishad, the Ishavasya Upanishad, the Chandogya Upanishad, Mundaka Upanishad, Mandukya Upanishad, Prashno Upanishad, and so on. There are about 11 of them, which are principal Upanishads. Um, so, we have just discussed the link between this Vedas and the Upanishads.